Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another special weather update. Looks like we're going to be chasing the next couple days here, starting with today in Nebraska. We've got 3 days in a row of slight risks across the Central Plains, starting with today. Today, you can see we've got this slight risk primarily centered over central Nebraska, a little bit of Kansas in there as well. We got a significant hail risk with this. That's the 15 hatched area. 2-inch diameter hail or larger is possible with supercell thunderstorms today, along with a 5% tornado risk. So we do have a bit of an elevated tornado threat today, including a little bit of north central Kansas and central Nebraska there. I'll probably be targeting around the McKinney, Nebraska area today, back towards Kearney. Thinking the southern zone of the risk could be the highest probability of seeing a tornado, but that could change later on. Moving on to tomorrow, once again, very similar area, got a slight risk. This one including a little bit of south central South Dakota and central Nebraska. And similarly to today, supercells appear possible, capable of tornadoes. A little bit lower tornado risk. I think that's because there's a little more uncertainty with this day, but I do believe when this becomes, when tomorrow comes, this could be a 5% tornado risk. So I think they're just waiting for a little more confidence before they issue a 5%. 15% hail risk. Once again, probably going to be significant hail with some of these supercells, but the uncertainty has led them not to introduce a 15 hatched area. Moving on to Saturday, we've got a larger slight risk. This is when this trough that's working in from the west is really starting to eject into the Central Plains. As you can see, it's almost got this curve to it. That's because there's a surface low that's forecasted to be situated up here in South Dakota, and this is all kind of pulling into that surface low. Tornadoes, damaging hail, straight line winds, all possible on this day. Too far out to really get into the specifics as to where this is going to be. The only thing I'll say, though, is with that surface low being up there in South Dakota and Nebraska, there's a chance you could get a higher end tornado, or not higher end, but elevated tornado risk in South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, maybe even part of Nebraska there. We're going to have to keep a close eye on that Saturday, but that'd be East Nebraska, West Iowa, South Dakota, East South Dakota, and Southwest Minnesota, where I think the greatest tornado potential would be on Saturday. Moving back to today, which is that 5% tornado risk, which is situated right over this area here. This is the HRRR run here at 5 p.m. and it shows storms developing up by Valentine, Nebraska in Cherry County, and also storms developing down here near McKinney, Nebraska. I think I'm going to be targeting this southern area of storms. Just seems like we're going to get more isolated supercells down here, and isolated supercells are more favorable for tornadoes. I jump forward an hour here. You can see now we have an isolated supercell near McKinney, Nebraska. The environment in this area looks very favorable for rotating storms. Let me pull a quick sounding just out ahead of this supercell here. Take a look at that photograph right there. You got nice low-level turning. Mid-level wind shear is a little bit on the weaker side, but that low-level turning is going to make up for that weakness in the mid-level wind shear. When you have strong low-level turning, tornadoes are always a possibility. And then as you approach OOZ, which would be 7 p.m., and then 8 o'clock, notice how the EHI parameter here, which is Energy Helicity Index, that increases with time. That's as that LLJ is increasing. The low-level jet is increasing in response to that shortwave trough coming through, and that's going to result in an increase in wind shear as you approach the night hours. And you can see this photograph gets quite large once you get to 8 o'clock. That's that increase in low-level wind shear. So there is definitely a tornado threat with these storms. If you do get isolated supercells, which does appear to be modeled here on the RRR, a couple tornadoes are definitely possible with any isolated storms from anywhere here in northwest Kansas up into central Nebraska. Tornadoes are definitely possible today. Let me show you one more thing here. Show you the the helicity tracks here. This basically simulates rotation in storms. It shows these storms down here rotating quite strongly down by McCook, Nebraska. And that's where I think the greatest tornado threat may be. However, there could be other storms to the north. In fact, it's likely there's going to be other supercells. The HRRR doesn't always do the best job of showing where those supercells are going to develop. So I think it's quite realistic to expect more supercells to the north of there that also would have tornado potential, as the environment up there is also almost equally favorable as it is down here. Moving on to tomorrow, which would be Friday. We go back down to 12Z here, and then we're going to jump to tomorrow. We've got showing a supercell, once again, pretty similar area, this time a little bit north and west out in Cherry County. The environment, however, is favorable in a much larger area, not just isolated to just Cherry County here. So you can see it's got this supercell developing kind of on the nose of this moisture. Down to the southeast, you've got a large area of EHI down here, and I could see there being supercells developing along the dry line, especially when you see a photograph like that. You got this nice low-level curvature. See this curve here? That's your wind shear right there. That's your low-level wind shear turning with height, and that's going to result in a pretty high tornado risk tomorrow if we do get discrete supercells that develop along the dry line. The dry line is right here. You can see it. It's where you got these high EHI values, and it just drops. That would be your dry line, because on the west side, that's dry air. Dry, stable air, not favorable for storms. And then on the other side, you have really unstable air, moist air that's favorable for supercells and severe storms. So that would be the dry line, and that's the boundary that you got to watch for storm initiation. And these models have always done a terrible job modeling storms developing on dry lines. So it's quite realistic to expect to get one or two isolated supercells along this dry line, even though they're not showing it. So we're going to have to really keep an eye on the south-central Nebraska area into north-central Kansas for discrete supercells tomorrow, capable of all severe weather hazards. Moving on to Saturday, gonna have to jump models. This time we're gonna jump to the NAM 3 kilometer here, since the HRRR HRRR doesn't reach Saturday yet. And what we're seeing here is kind of got this line segment developing here, but inside of there you got some supercells ongoing. This is modeling supercells up by Norfolk, Nebraska, and then maybe some more supercells down by Falls City, Nebraska, near Beatrice. Environment this day is quite interesting. This is when that trough really starts to eject into the Central Plains, and let me switch to that real quick. This is the 500 millibar winds here on the NAM. This is your trough right here. See that U shape once again, and then it's spinning around this surface low right here, and mid-level cyclone. This would be the mid-level cyclone, but if I go down towards the surface, let's go to 850 here. This is where your surface low would be right here. And then in response to that surface low and that trough coming in, you've got this large area of low-level jet that's across Iowa up into Minnesota, kind of a maximum here over Minnesota and West Minnesota, East South Dakota. You've got 50 knots, even 60 knots of low-level jet. So that is a very, very strong low-level wind shear. That's going to support rotating storms up and down this warm front here in East South Dakota, Southwest Minnesota, West Iowa, and East Nebraska. I'm going to go to EHI here real quick. The only inhibiting factor with this setup would be instability appears to be on the low side. If you have a lot of cloud cover, this is, by the way, this is your CAPE here, forecasted instability. And we're only talking about 500 joules a kilogram across the area. So cloud cover could be an issue on Saturday across this area. Down here in Iowa, you can see now you got 2,000, 3,000. So that might shunt that severe threat a little bit to the south. Still possibility of tornadoes and stuff up here, but it's going to be a lot more severe if we get some of these 2,000s or 1,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE. If that can find its way further north, then this is going to become an even more significant severe weather threat. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on Saturday. A bit too far out to really get into the specifics as far as where this is going to be, but it does seem realistic to expect all hazards, damaging wind, and hail on Saturday as well. So pretty active period here with 3 days of severe weather potential, starting with today with that 5% tornado risk, and then tomorrow once again with a 2% tornado risk, and then the day 3 you've got 15% probabilities everywhere. I would expect a 5% tornado risk at some point to be issued, probably for this northern region, maybe around the Kansas City area as well. We got to keep an eye on that area. There's kind of a secondary target we're going to be looking at, but since that's pretty far out, we're not going to get into the specifics because a lot will change between now and Saturday. But I'll be out chasing all 3 of these days as tornadoes appear quite possible. And starting with today, it looks like I'll be going live around 4 o'clock. So that being said, I got to get ready, get a couple things done here for the chase today, and then I got to hit the road. So appreciate everybody for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one.